Hello YouTube, this is Neon. Today I am going to be giving an opinion piece on DACA, on issues that I see in the civil and immigration rights movement, and about the incredible success of the gay rights movement. So, DACA. Deferred Action for Childhood. Oh my god, I forgot. I forgot what the acronym DACA is. For childhood arrivals. So I couldn't disagree with President Trump anymore on his decision. I completely disagree with him as an immigrants' rights, I can't say activist, but certainly as somebody that believes in immigrants' rights, and ultimately an amnesty is what I believe in, but a very short path to citizenship I would settle for. I believe that what he's done is unfortunate. Briefly reading an article on Yahoo News, they suggested that he was appealing to anti-immigrant politicians that were more hardline than him. If they really even want to go after children, these young adults that are in school, that have been brought here against their will, they had no choice, and that know no other place as home. These people, these far right, these extremist anti-immigrant politicians want to go after these children and against these young adults. And even Trump, as hardline as his anti-immigration stance is, even he didn't want to end DACA, but he did to appeal to these extremists. I think it's unfortunate. I think that it's a cop-out. I am glad that if Congress can get it together and can write DACA into law, that Trump apparently would gladly sign it. But until then, he's not going to back up these young students that we need here and that are a blessing to this country. So, within the immigrants' rights movement, within the civil rights movement, there's a lot of fracturedness, if you will. I talked to one gay pastor who was a pastor of a predominantly gay Latino church. He is Latino as well, speaks both Spanish and English, and he talked about being rejected by the immigrants' rights movement. There was a protest out here in 2007 in which a lot of immigrants got hurt by the LAPD, and a lot of the Latino pastors were involved in the leadership of this movement. And when this particular gay Latino pastor was trying to speak, the heterosexual Latino pastors wanted to have nothing to do with him. So, unfortunately, there are those within the immigrants' rights movement whose lack of respect and lack of value for gays exceeds their desire to have people behind them and standing side by side with them, championing their cause. They would rather not accept and not allow someone to speak, supporting them, rather than accepting that this person is gay, even though they're not even speaking on a gay agenda. So that is very, very unfortunate that their disrespect for gay people trumps their willingness to work together on a common good, which is immigrants' rights. I have experienced that to some extent as well. I've been involved very mildly with two different community centers, privately run, privately owned. I was involved briefly, very briefly with one, and then briefly with another. They're very pro-gay, very, very pro-gay, pro-transgender, so they're very progressive in that respect. But in their case, because of how the media covered this protest out at MacArthur Park which is where most of the violence took place, they've decided, many of them have decided that this country is so bad that nobody should be fighting for citizenship in this country. So, by their own words, that's not their main goal anymore, is to get amnesty or citizenship, or certainly residency, for our immigrants that are doing such a great job here in this country that we obviously need. We need them here. We need them to stay, and they deserve equal rights. I believe they deserve citizenship, but they believe, as I said, this country's too bad. Why would you want to be? Why would you want to be a citizen in this country? So, and they don't really want to make that their main cause anymore, even though they are pro-immigrant. I believe the same thing happens in the civil rights movement, where historically African American leaders really had to be in the closet about being gay. And I believe that so many African Americans, their disrespect and devaluation of gay people is bigger than their desire to have economic equality. And many don't want to stand side by side with a gay person, particularly a gay man. Which I think is very, very unfortunate, because that's a fractured movement. And it becomes weaker. The more people that are kicked out of the movement or not welcome to the movement, the less potential power that movement has. Now, I believe that during the 80s, there was this push to sort of end pornography and to make it illegal. Pornography, as we know it in the U.S., is illegal in much of the Western world. I believe in Japan, for example, genitals cannot be shown. So they've definitely, to 2017, they've got real limits they place on pornography in some of the Western world. I heard that the two biggest forces that really were fighting against pornography in the U.S. were feminists and Christians. But because Christians are very much anti-abortion, right? The right-wing, conservative, social conservative Christians, they're so anti-abortion that they were unwilling to stand side by side with feminists. Now, I do not know if that was mutual, if feminists were also unwilling to stand side by side with Christians, because they're so pro-choice that they don't want to fight together on a common cause, which would be anti-porn, on a cause which they both agree on. I'm kind of glad that that whole anti-porn thing didn't go through, by the way, because what would I do at night and during the day and when I get depressed and when I get bored? Okay, I like porn. So, I really attribute the extraordinary success. Oh, one more thing before that. As I understand it, recently, within about the last year, a movement started within the immigrants' rights movement that is, it's sort of a sub-movement within the immigrant rights movement, and it really addresses the issues of black immigrants. And I only read one article about this, and I read it like a year ago, so my knowledge is probably hazy, okay? And I'm not sure if the movement is called Las Vidas Negras Importan, which is Spanish for Black Lives Matters, or if the movement has its own separate name. But I believe it was started by an immigrant from Panama who is a Spanish speaker, but of African descent, which you might call an Afro-Latino. In the article, they really assert that the immigrants' rights movement actively discriminates against black immigrants or immigrants of African descent, that they do not want the face of the movement to be anything other than a light brown, probably lighter brown skin than me, straight-haired face. That's what they want the immigrants' rights movement to look like. The article asserted that immigrants of African descent or black immigrants are routinely treated with much more harshness. They're much more likely to be deported. The U.S. puts in much more effort to prevent them from getting into the country, particularly as concerns Haitian immigrants. This may apply to Jamaican immigrants, I'm not sure about that. but it applies to Haitian immigrants. And he also asserts, this young man who started this Latino version of Black Lives Matters, that Spanish-speaking immigrants who are of African descent, many of whom come from Honduras, from Panama, from Cuba, possibly from Nicaragua. There are certain Spanish-speaking countries that have large populations of people of African descent. And he really, this article asserts that the immigrant rights movement sort of actively discriminates against them, doesn't do anything to try to include them in the immigrant rights protests and marches. And I'm not going to say across the board that this always happens and that every single immigrants rights person is discriminating against people that have tightly curled hair like African Americans do and people of African descent, but that it does commonly happen, and that it's sad that this movement for Black Latinos and Black immigrants has to even come forth. If there was not these fractures within the immigrants' rights movement, I don't even think it would be necessary. While in recent years under Trump, the LGBT rights movement, LGBTQ, has had some setbacks in terms of transgender rights, transgender women and men allowed to serve in the military and perhaps to use the restroom of their choice. Overall, the successes have been extreme. I mean, we have marriage now, marriage equality throughout the United States. I believe that the main thing that has caused all of the success in the gay rights movement, to me, to my way of thinking, is, or in my opinion, is that the gay rights movement has been very open and accepting to everybody who's pro-gay. If they happen to be anti-choice, they're still going to be accepted within a pro-gay context. If they're Republican, but they're pro-gay, they're probably still going to be accepted and welcomed. Anybody who's pro-gay is going to be accepted and welcomed, even if they're heterosexual. They're going to be accepted and welcomed and appreciated. This may be a pragmatic response on the part of gay rights activists to the really, the void of humanity against gay men in the outbreak of AIDS. That we all deserve to die, that we're sinners, that this is God's judgment. And so we were sort of, the gay rights movement, I can't say me because I was a self-hating gay at that time, but the gay rights movement really had to fight for equal rights. In so doing, they were able to get, and are ultimately going to achieve equal rights on par with straights, as it should be. Whether it's gay adoption, equal rights in the workplace, equal rights for transgender women and men, marriage equality. I believe it's going to happen, and it is because of that open and welcoming attitude amongst gays. I think that there's fear amongst the civil rights movement that we don't want to accept whites because we don't want to bow down to them. We don't want them to dictate. And gays didn't do that. Gays didn't say, and I'll give you an example. One time, I heard a group of gays talking, and one gay said something like, who cares what Ben Affleck has to say on part of the gay rights movement? He's not gay, he's straight, and he doesn't really need to be speaking for us. And 2 or 3 other gays said, what the hell are you talking about? He's speaking for us, I agree with him totally, he's for our cause, why are you going to sit there and try to treat him like he's an enemy? And I think that's been the general attitude with the gay rights movement. It's been welcoming. There are those gays that aren't welcoming, but they're the exception, and I believe they're shut down by the more pragmatic, open-minded gays. And I think that the civil rights and the immigrants' rights movement needs to be much more pragmatic and open and accepting of people that are fighting for them, or that want to fight for them, but a lot of times can't because they want to be rejected by certain arms of the movement. That's about it. If you like my video, please like, subscribe, share, comment commercials, recommend my videos. Do one or more of those things. Thank you.